This is the all-new Nissan Qashqai, the third generation of a car that's been one of the most popular family cars of the last 2 decades. And there's a lot to take in here because it's got an all-new look, new tech and electrified powertrains. But is it still the family SUV to buy? Before we find out, make sure you've subscribed to the Auto Express channel so you can keep up to date with all the latest new car reviews. The Qashqai then. It's so popular in the UK that it's become as much a part of our road furniture as traffic lights or roundabouts. And quite a lot like roundabouts, the Qashqai's debut was all about revolution. In the mid-2000s, Nissan was well behind the family car benchmark. The worthy but tediously dull Almera was struggling to stamp its place against cars like the VW Golf and Ford Focus, so Nissan took the radical step of saying, let's do our own thing. And so in 2006 came the first Qashqai. It had all the sensible engines and low running costs that you'd want from a regular hatchback and on a similar footprint, but with a taller SUV inspired body. It became a huge hit and the second generation car continued the success story. In fact, the Qashqai has become a near permanent fixture in the top 10 best-selling cars in the UK ever since. It made all the other brands scamper around to copy the formula as quickly as they could. Now, the reason why the previous 2 Qashqais were so popular is because they really nailed their brief. I mean, sure, neither were the most stylish to look at or even the most fun to drive, but neither of those things really matter for a family car. What does matter is that they were comfortable, they were spacious, they were safe, and they were competitively priced. But here's the thing, there are so many rivals to the Qashqai now, almost every manufacturer makes a car like this. So this car really needs to up its game. Let's start with the styling, and here Nissan's designers have managed to pull off quite a slick trick. One glance at the new shape and it does look instantly familiar, still very Qashqai-ish but somehow sharper and more substantial. The shoulders are more square, the lines more crisp and the details finer. But despite appearances, it's just 35mm longer and 32mm wider than before. The bonnet, the doors and the front wings are all made from aluminium now, and the boot lid is composite, which all contributes to a 60kg weight saving compared to the old one. But there's no feeling of lightness in here because this new Qashqai actually feels really sturdy. It's so much nicer than the old car, not only in the way that it looks, but in the tech that it's got too. It's absolutely packed with fancy displays. For a start, there's a digital driver's display in front of me, there's a 10.8-inch head-up display right here, and then there's this new infotainment system. Now, this is a big improvement over the screen that you got in the old one, but that's not really saying much. What is important is that it actually loads quite quickly, the layout is clear, and it responds reasonably well to your touches. It's not the best system in the class, but it is a lot better than the old one. It is practical though. The doors at the back open really wide, so it's dead easy to get in or load a child seat. There's plenty of headroom, plenty of knee room, and even a couple of USB ports dotted about the place. Moving on to the boot, and this is what a 504 litre boot looks like. It's 74 litres more than the old Qashqai, and there's a couple of clever features in here too. You get a 12-volt socket there, a few hanging hooks and tethering points around the place, and this false floor actually has a wipe clean side so you can reverse it when you're carrying dirty things. What's not so great is when you've hidden this away and you want the floor flat, you get this horrible step ahead of the back seats, which isn't ideal. Those numbers aren't class leading, but for the typical family they should do just fine. When it comes to the sensible stuff then, the Qashqai is off to a pretty decent start. But what is it like to drive? Now, let's start with the engines. From launch, the Qashqai comes with a choice of 2 1.3 litre turbocharged petrol engines. They're pretty similar to the ones that were in the old Qashqai, but now they have mild hybrid technology. What this means is that there's a little 12-volt starter generator unit in place of a regular starter motor, and when you slow down, it charges a little battery which then stores energy that can be used under acceleration, and it gives just a very gentle 6 Nm torque boost to take load off the engine. This results in a CO2 drop of 4 grams per kilometre compared to an engine without the mild hybrid tech. 2 power outputs are available, 138 brake horsepower and 156 brake horsepower. I'm driving the more powerful of the 2 options here, and you know what? It actually works really nicely. It accelerates smoothly, it feels like that it's got enough torque that if you wanted to load it up with people and things, it would pull just as strongly, and unlike in some other applications where this 1.3 can sound just a little bit thrashy, here it's not bad at all, even if you kind of rev down and accelerate hard. yeah, it's not too bad at all. In reality, most buyers will be best served with the lower powered model. There's only 18 brake horsepower and 20 Newton meters in it, so unless you're really loading the car up to the rafters or thrashing it, it's probably best to just save the extra cash. You won't really notice four-wheel drive most of the time, which is why Nissan expects 98% of buyers to get front-wheel drive versions. Manual and auto gearboxes are available. The CVT Automatic has been designed to mimic a regular step transmission, but it just ends up making weird droning noises. Unless you really need the auto, we'd recommend going for the manual instead. Under the skin, the Qashqai rides on the CMF-B platform. As well as being lighter than the previous car, it's more rigid than before too, which should make it seem more refined. And you know what? It does. It's actually quite refined and quite relaxing in here. Road noise is about the most audible thing that you can hear. There's a little bit of a grumble, but beyond that, this is a fairly relaxing place to be. You can quite easily imagine yourself whiling away hundreds of miles behind the wheel of this thing and feeling nice and fresh at the end of it. Now, this being a sensible family hatchback, it's unfair to assume that it's going to behave like a sports car in the corners. Having said that, it is actually a lot better than the old one. It's not going to put a massive grin on your face as you're going through the bends, but it behaves really nicely. The steering is a big improvement over the old car. It's precise and it's weighted nicely and just a big improvement overall. But then it corners flatly through the bends too. It doesn't get too unsettled when you throw it over a couple of bumps. Yeah, it's not bad at all. Prices for the new Qashqai start from £23,500, and the good news is Nissan isn't skimping on the safety kit, even in the most basic Vizia model. Auto headlights, forward collision warning, blind spot and lane departure warning, and rear parking sensors are among the heap of assistance systems offered on every single model. Of the 5 trim levels on offer, you need to jump up to the mid-spec N connector to get the big infotainment screen and digital dials, while the Tecna adds the head-up display, wireless charging and Nissan's ProPilot semi-autonomous driving tech. The range tops out with the Tecna Plus. It gets 20-inch alloy wheels, part leather seats and a Bose Hi-Fi, and is priced from just over 34 grand. That's quite competitive against rivals like the 3008 and Tucson, and roughly on a par with the Skoda Karoq. And here's the thing, the new Qashqai has continued the good work of its predecessors, but new rivals can offer more. It doesn't really matter that the Qashqai isn't the most desirable in its class, but when the Peugeot 3008 and Hyundai Tucson look and feel more special, yet are at least as practical and as good to drive as the Nissan, then the Qashqai becomes a much harder sell. So then, the new Nissan Qashqai. It's comfy, yet it's better to drive than before. The new tech is great, especially the safety kit, and it's a really practical car. The thing is, there are rivals which do all of that now, but are more stylish or better to drive, or both. So while the Qashqai is a good car, it's no longer the best in its class.